In 1988, we were introduced to John McClane and Die Hard. This was one of the best action movies of its time. There was a lot of action movies round about that time, but I think the thing that made this work was the fact that Bruce Willis came across as an everyman. He could have just been this random guy walking down the street. He wasn't your average action star with the big muscles and the big massive guns. He was walking about in his bare feet in a tank top because that's all he had. The whole premise of just this everyday cop having to stop this terrorist attack on this building was good for its time. Up until then, action movies were big bulky guys with big massive guns and armies and stuff like that. This was more contained in like one building. You didn't have a jungle, you didn't have a town, you had a building, most of which was cut off for him, so he only had like 6 or 7 floors to play about with, and the space was very contained. This is what made the movie as successful as it was. The action, the acting, and the actors. If it didn't have the people that it did, personally I don't think it would have done as well. Bringing in Alan Rickman as the bad guy was fantastic casting. He is someone who could turn his hand to take any role and he would be perfect for it, as we've seen throughout his career. Bruce Willis had just come off a success with his TV show and a couple of films before that, and just putting all of that together made it work extremely well. Because of the massive success and the positive reviews that it got, they were greenlit for a sequel, and then they made Die Hard 2 in 1990. Die Hard 2 is sort of the black sheep of the original trilogy. A lot of people say that it's the worst movie out of the original trilogy. I wouldn't say it's the worst movie out of the original trilogy. I'd say it's not the best. Saying it's the worst implies that it's bad. I've recently went and watched all 5 of the Die Hard movies, and honestly, it's not a bad movie, despite what a lot of people say. I mean, the cast, again, were fantastic. Everybody was well cast. The script was really good. The story was good. And again, it's contained to one area. Fair enough, it's a larger area because they've got the airport, but it's still contained, which I think helps make the action movie a lot better, because like with Mission Impossible films, the action scenes can take place anywhere. It's a worldwide scope. The same with the Expendables and things like that. It's across the world. They contain it in one bit per scene, but overall, the entire movie is set in one place, which I think brings people in, because it's like, oh, where are they now? Where are they now? It's like, no, they're there, and that's it. So I think it gets a lot of flack unnecessarily because it's not as good as 1 and 3. I mean, when it came out, it was all positive reviews again, and it made money for them. It didn't get a sequel for 5 years. When it came out, the sequel, it was contained, but on a bit of a larger scale, because it was contained to Manhattan. But with Die Hard 3, they sort of decided to make it into like a buddy movie, and they introduced Samuel L. Jackson's character. This didn't hurt the franchise, it didn't hurt the movie. In fact, this was the highest grossing of the Die Hard movies at that time. Even if you included inflation and stuff, it was still the highest grossing out of them all. It had mixed reviews because I think people were expecting it to be just another Die Hard movie. This wasn't a Die Hard script. The script was called Simon Says. That had been greenlit, and then it got stuck in production hell, and then the producers said, why don't we try and make this into the next Die Hard movie, do some rewrites, and we'll get it to be what it is. And so they got in a fantastic cast again, with Jeremy Irons coming in as Simon Gruber, who played the part fantastically. I can't really say much about Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson because they were always really, really good, whatever they done in movies. The rapport between them was fantastic, and I think that's what helped make this a buddy movie, because you could see that even though Samuel L. Jackson didn't want to be any part of this, he got dragged in and he just ran with it, because if he didn't, he was going to die. And he plays that part very well. After the initial trilogy, we waited 12 years before we got another Die Hard movie. In this movie, because of everything that had happened, there was a lot more cybercrime, as it were, and they brought that in to this character's life. They thought, how would John McClane deal with this situation? This is where it started to get a bit over the top for action movie in the Die Hard franchise. I mean, the whole thing about taking out a helicopter with a car, taking on a fighter jet with a truck. This is where you start to get into the realms of Fast and Furious type things. Fair enough, at this point there had only been like 3 Fast and Furious movies, so they were still roughly about racing and the criminal underworld. But this sort of pushed the boundaries of the action genre, which I think started the push for other action type movies to go and take it beyond the realms of reality. Overall though, I enjoyed the movie. It's not the best movie in the franchise, but it was fairly enjoyable. Again, the cast were excellent. Timothy Olyphant as the main bad guy, he was just twisted, but overall it got mostly positive reviews and made a bucket full of money. They didn't lose anything on it. Which brings me to Die Hard 5. A Good Day to Die Hard. It sort of lived up to its name. This, I'd say, was the poorest movie of the franchise. I'm not going to say it's the worst. I'd say it's the poorest movie in the franchise, because it was 2013, so it's 6 years after the last one. They've got it where John McClane has seen that his son has been arrested in Russia and he has to go and save him. This takes place in Russia, and also they go to Chernobyl, to the exclusion zone. This one for me, I think, was a lot slower than the other movies. I don't think it fits well with the rest of the franchise. It feels like it's just a movie that they're trying to bring in a new character to take over the franchise. With that, they brought in Jay Courtney to be Bruce Willis' son. The dynamic between them was perfect. You could clearly see Jay Courtney acting as his son, who is bitter that, you know, his dad hasn't reached out before, and it wasn't until this happened that he's reached out, and you can see that they are trying to form this bond to further the franchise. It's just the way it was written. I think it was rushed. I think after it was greenlit, it was early 2012 that it was greenlit, so they finished writing it, got it into production as quickly as they could, and then it came out at the end of 2013. So it was a whole rush project. There wasn't too much thought put into it. It's like, we have this script, this is the basic script, and then they changed it up to make it into a Die Hard movie. They've seen that worked before, but they had more time, whereas with this one they didn't have as much time to make it into a proper Die Hard movie. It got fairly negative reviews. I can understand people not enjoying it because it's not a proper Die Hard movie, but I don't think it deserved to get the reviews that it got. I mean, hindsight is a great thing. we can look back at things and go, well, that wasn't that bad. As I said, I've went and watched all of the movies again, and it was an enjoyable movie. It's your typical action film. There wasn't as much pushing the boundaries of reality with the action scenes and stuff like that. It was getting less believable about the things that Bruce Willis could do because of his age. After all this time being in all these situations, you would think it would start to have a toll on him, but it hadn't. I just think that if they were given more time with the script to get it better as a Die Hard movie, I don't think it would have been as lower rated than the rest of the movies. With the sad news of Bruce Willis's illnesses, it is highly unlikely that we are going to get any more Die Hard movies. If we do, it would be a reboot of the franchise with somebody else playing the character, or it would be a continuation with Jay Courtney being the son of John McClane. If they do that, then there's still room to get Bruce Willis as a cameo. Whether that's possible with his illness at the moment, we don't know. However, there is always possibilities, especially with the AI and the CGI and things like that, stand-ins, and that is a way that they could bring John McClane back to the franchise if they continue it with Jay Courtney being the son, and that's how they continue it. But as of now, there's no future plans for any more Die Hard movies. Overall, as a franchise, I'd say it's probably about, I'd say it's sitting at 3.5 out of 5 for the entire franchise. If I go through each movie, Die Hard is 4.5. It had everything that you wanted for an action movie, and everybody was believable. For Die Hard 2, personally, I would give it 3 stars. It's not good as the other movies in the franchise for the original trilogy, but when you add in 4 and 5, it's a lot better than those ones. Die Hard with a Vengeance is 4 stars. A lot of people might disagree with me and say that it should be 4.5 as well, but I'm giving it 4 because they had the time to take a different screenplay and make it into a Die Hard movie, but they made it a buddy movie as well, which sort of tried to take it out of the Die Hard way of writing. So one guy, all this stuff happens to him, and then they tried to add somebody else, so it's like a lot of people saw this as it's not a Die Hard movie, it's a different type of movie, because the first 2 were set at Christmas, and I don't care what anybody says, the first 2 movies are Christmas movies. If you don't agree with me, let me know, I'll argue with you later. Die Hard 4.0, I will give 2.5 stars. Even though it's enjoyable, it just pushed the boundaries of reality too much, I think, for a Die Hard movie. With Die Hard 5, I'm giving it 2 stars. A lot of people will disagree. They'll have given it 1 or 0 stars. I could see they were trying to build a future for the franchise by bringing in his son. I could see that they were trying to have a buddy movie, but with a different relationship, and I think that worked. If you enjoy a good action movie and you want to binge a movie franchise of action movies, give it a go. Watch all 5. Be your own judge. For a long time, I hadn't seen Die Hard 5, and this came out in 2013. I didn't see it until 2017. That was 5 years I hadn't actually watched the conclusion of the franchise. I'd missed all the reviews, so I watched it and I thought it was okay. And then I read the reviews and I was like, why is it getting such a hard time? It's not a terrible movie. Even though they pushed the boundaries in some of the movies, they were still enjoyable. See ya.